Howdy folks, Tex Grebner here with Tex Grebner Outdoors. You guys have noticed by now that I'm a huge fan of cold steel spears. However, they are quite modern in their design. I'm going to show you how to take some very primitive techniques and make a modern version of an ancient weapon. This is an Atlatl. It is for throwing spears / darts. Technically, an Atlatl throws darts. This is what the Clovis people would have been hunting bison and mastodon and mammoth with. It extends your arm so you actually have more leverage when you throw a spear. Ironically enough, I'm actually no good with this thing. But if we're going to be getting primal, I'm going to show you how to take the elitism out of primitive bushcraft, but use primitive techniques with modern material. When you buy an Atlatl, it's going to come with these basically crappy Atlatl darts. These are basically dowel rods, and this one even came to me totally warped. It's got flu feathers on it. It's light. It doesn't hold any energy. In order to make these modern Atlatl darts and kind of take the elitism out of bushcraft, you're going to need some of this Quick Bond Aero Cement by Easton. I wouldn't recommend using epoxy the first time you do that stuff, because 2-ton epoxy ain't coming out. If you mess up, it's permanent. You're also going to need about a dozen arrows. Specifically, you're going to need 6 of these Maxima 350s, full length. You're also going to need 6 of these XX75 Fall Stalker by Easton. These do not have a tunable knock, and these are the 22/16 diameter. These Maximas are going to be the carbon core for our Atlatl darts. You're going to have to cut the back end of the Easton off with a hacksaw. You're also going to need 3 of these 1/8" bolts. Pretty sure they're 1/8 inch. I basically took the inserts out of my Carbon Express Maxima pack, took them up to my local hardware store and said, find me something that fits in this about 2.5 inches long, and they'll be able to help you. This is going to be used to stick together 2 inserts. By the time that we're done, we're going to have made 3 Atlatl darts out of a dozen arrows. We're going to be using a male ferrule to stick them together, and then we're going to cover it and glue it together. The first step is taking your 2 carbon style inserts and butting them up face to face on the actual bolt that will join them. This is actually a very ancient technique that I learned about by reading about the way that African bushmen actually make their arrows when good straight arrow shafts are in short supply. They will take 2 crooked pieces of arrow shaft, cut them to where they are straight, and then join them in the middle with a vegetable glue on a bone ferrule slid into the cane sections that are hollow. So if it works for primitive arrows, why wouldn't it work with modern arrows to make one long arrow being an Atlatl dart? I have cut the end off of my bolt head to create a burr, and I have now backed the insert down to where I can glue the threads in. Now it is time to set my insert, wipe off the glue, and let it cure. While that insert is curing in, I am now setting my other insert, which actually went in much easier. I'm going to set those aside, and while my second arrow shaft cures, I'm going to shave off the fletching and remove the knock on my first arrow shaft. This is going to create the carbon core for my Atlatl darts. Now I'm going to take one of my aluminum shafts and shave off the fletching as well. Only do this with one of your aluminum arrow shafts, and it is very important that you're using 350s and 22/16s so that the dimensions are correct. Now I'm going to carefully, just in front of the knock, as straight as I can, hacksaw off the rear of the arrow for the knock cap and smooth it out with a file so that it is as perfectly square as I can achieve. Leaving the fletchings on the rear part of my Atlatl dart, I am now going to cut off the end and square it up. My inserts are now very well cured, and I'm going to assemble the carbon core good and tight. Once I have them together, I'm going to slide the front end of my Atlatl skin over and then flush it up with the front. And as you can see, I have slid the back end over, and because I actually cut the arrows shorter, I have some carbon sticking out. I'm going to mark that, put it in a vise, and I'm going to trim it with the hacksaw. This prevents there being a flex point in the center of the dart by offsetting the carbon break point with the offset of the aluminum break point where the shafts will later join, so that I can screw them together once they are glued on, and there will actually be an overlap of the aluminum and the carbon. Now it's time to glue my arrow over top of my carbon arrow. I'm rotating the carbon arrow to evenly distribute the glue, and now I'm removing the rear portion of my carbon arrow shaft. Keeping my finger on both ends, I'm going to flush up the front of the Atlatl with the back of the Atlatl, at least the foreshaft. Now, once that has been laid aside long enough to cure up, I'm going to put in my carbon insert into my carbon core, and it is perfectly flushed up. Now it is time to reassemble, and as you can see, the rear carbon core is going to seat almost a full inch inside of the aluminum skin, so that it is reinforced and the forces are not all being distributed on that puny little 1/8 inch bolt. Now that I have glue on the rear part of my core, I'm going to rotate and slide my rear arrow shaft skin over top of it, being careful, if I want this to remain a takedown dart, to not completely glue
the entire shaft together. As you can see, I now have a dart that is ready for curing.
Here I have one completed Atlatl dart made with modern material that should be quite durable but not indestructible. It is, of course, a takedown, as you can see, and it screws together. My original design just had 2 carbon arrows stuck together with a male ferrule. Didn't work out so well because it actually created a shear and a flex point in the center. Now it flushes up just perfect. Right now I actually have a broadhead on it because I'm dangerous. And as you can see, it has an open end for my actual Atlatl. This is the dart. This is the Atlatl. Now I'm going to let this cure up overnight before I actually do any throwing with it, so stay tuned. This here is the first dart that I actually made, and as you can see, it has a very short section of core shaft overlap. This dart I actually cut a full 2 inches off the foreshaft of my Atlatl core. That way I not only have a greater overlap of the aluminum skin on the foreshaft, but I also am able to put in the aluminum arrow insert behind my carbon core. That way I have a good squared off, perfectly round and perfectly flat hole. I'm not going to stand here and pretend to you that I'm some bushcraft badass. What I have done is taken the elitism out of bushcraft. Yes, I bought this Atlatl throwing board. I made these darts out of modern materials. I am not very good at primitive bushcraft. I confess, I am terrible at friction fire. I am not very good at flint knapping. I am not very good at primitive arrow making, and I have never made a survival bow or a self bow that was very much any good. However, for what these are, these Atlatl darts give me the opportunity to practice with a primitive weapon in a much more user-friendly way. This is a ridiculously close range for an Atlatl. I am much better with a cold steel spear at this range. However, I look at cold steel spears and spear hunting in general as more of a dangerous game type adventure experience. Atlatls are much more of a long-range primitive weapon. You don't become a genetically viable member of the population by getting killed by what you're trying to eat. Our ancestors could throw this with alarming accuracy at great distance. What's nice about this is, if you did actually get good enough with it that you could go out and, say, hunt wild hogs, you've got modern Atlatl darts that you can screw in whatever broadhead you would want to use. These are just regular 100-grain field points right now, but because you're using a modern insert, you could use any type of broadhead that you wanted. I am not very good at this, I admit, but this is not something that you simply pick up and are good at. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to share and subscribe. New videos every Saturday. As always, God bless all my sportsmen of America. Join the NRA to protect our rights. This got my friends over at legallyconcealed.org. Thank you very much to those of you involved in law enforcement and those of you serving in the military. And thanks for watching Tex Grebner Outdoors.